We're going to start the advocacy part of our program next. Everyone get settled.
And the churches, and I was going to hear about Christian churches. That's been my hesitancy on the main area.
Okay, so my name is Rich Fava, and I am the chair of the advocacy team of Strangers No Longer. We are gathered today to acknowledge the great advocacy work that we have done as a team and to lay out our work for next year. Since our first Assembly for Human Dignity last December, and the approval of our platform to affirm human dignity, we have spent the last 12 months working on the passing of the Drive Safe bills. From our lobby day in February, where 170 of us went to Lansing in the dead of winter, to in-person meetings with our legislators at coffee hours, and to countless letters and contacts, we have given a voice to our migrant brothers and sisters. And I am so proud of the work you all have done. I want to give you a round of applause. I'm just so proud of this organization. However, as we have learned, advocacy work is a marathon, not a sprint. It's a hard lesson to learn, for me personally, by the way. Unfortunately, the Drive Safe bills are not out of committee yet, and challenges are still ahead of us. But we are not defeated. 2024 is another opportunity to show our resolve and our power. Our platform for human dignity is a living document, not a one-time effort. We learned a lot about advocacy as a team in 2023, and we will continue to fight in 2024. And in the next minutes, you will learn about where we are headed in this effort. At this time, I would like to introduce Sister Martha De La Torre, who's our co-director of leadership development, to talk about the continuing development of our platform. Thank you.
I think I want to take it. The good things are. Okay, good morning, everybody, again. As Rich says, last year on December the 9th, the membership of Strangers No Longer and allied organizations, along with some government representatives, met in this same place to held our first Great Assembly for Human Dignity. In that assembly, the platform to affirm human dignity was ratified. It was prepared thanks to the dedication of the Immigrant Women's Circle of Support, who shared the problems that they have to face every day in their life as immigrants. These problems are in the platform that you have in your hands. At that assembly, we all committed to working hard so that immigrants could get a driver's license and thus be able to access services that require official identification. Today, we are here again with an updated platform. Recently, the circles took on the task of reviewing the platform, and they appreciated the preparation of such a complete and important document for their lives. Being a written document that fits the hope of an improvement in their lives, they saw it necessary to make known the suffering they still experience in certain difficult situations. In the circles, the desire was expressed to continue the fight for the driver's license, something extremely necessary for their life. But there was also a need to support legislation against wage theft, because in one way or another, immigrants have been affected by injustices on the part of their employers. Healthcare is another important aspect in their lives. The entities that provide health services to immigrants are overloaded with work, and there are no short-term appointments. Furthermore, many immigrants do not have medical insurance because they lack official identification, like the driver's license. They also see the need for psychological support in schools for students with problems, both at school and at home. Language continues to be a barrier for immigrants in their interactions with the police when they are detained for having committed any infraction. Officials improperly have gone so far as to ask for the documents of those accompanying the driver. Their undocumented status prevents them from defending themselves for fear of being sent to court or being deported. This platform is the essence of this assembly and drives our commitment to the defense of a more dignified life for everyone, but especially for those who are deprived of the benefits granted to other Americans.
Thanks, Sister Martha. You know, on the platforms that were passed out to you when you came in today, the areas that have italics, italicized or bolded are things that are new this year. So Martha's team reviewed the platform in detail and then added some of the things Martha spoke about. And again, it's the intent that this document is a living document, and it represents really the state of the living conditions of our immigrant brothers and sisters. So at this time, I would like to introduce Blanca Garcia, one of our leaders from Our Lady of Guadalupe Chapel in Traverse City. She will be speaking about the challenges of living in Michigan without a driver's license still. Let's give her an applause, especially for driving from Traverse City this morning to join us. Blanca?
Hola, buenos días. Me llamo Blanca García. Soy originaria de México y he vivido en Michigan por más de 15 años.
Hello, good morning. My name is Blanca Garcia, and I am originally from Mexico, and I've lived in Michigan for over 15 years.
Me vi en la necesidad de emigrar a los Estados Unidos por cuestiones de violencia doméstica.
I saw the need to immigrate to the United States because of domestic violence I was experiencing.
Trayendo conmigo a mi hijo. El paso de los años me di la oportunidad de regresar con mi ahora ex esposo.
I brought with me my son, and over the years I had the opportunity to return with my now ex-husband.
Antes del 2008 no tenía la necesidad de manejar porque el papá de mis hijos nos llevaba.
Before 2008, I didn't have the need to drive because the son of my kids would take us everywhere, and he would drive us everywhere.
Las cosas no funcionaron y decidimos separarnos, quedándome yo con mis 3 hijos de 9, año y medio y 8 meses en ese entonces.
Things didn't turn out, and so we decided to separate, and I stayed with my 3 kids, who were then 9, 1.5, and 8 months old.
A como Dios me dio a entender, empecé a manejar sin instructor alguno, porque no quería depender de nadie.
So, as God kind of guided me to understand, I began to drive without any sort of instruction or direction because I didn't want to depend on anyone else.
Hice mi examen escrito, pero no pude sacar mi licencia porque en esa semana del 2008 había pasado la ley de que las personas inmigrantes no tenían derecho de tener licencias.
I did my written exam to get my license, but I was not able to actually obtain the license because in exactly that week in 2008, they had just passed the bill that immigrant people would no longer have the right to a driver's license.
Desafortunadamente ha sido muy duro para nosotros el no tener licencias.
Unfortunately, it's been very difficult for us to not have driver's licenses.
No podemos conseguir medicamentos para nuestros hijos sin antes mostrar una identificación.
We cannot obtain certain medications for our children without showing this ID.
No podemos rentar viviendas por nosotros mismos.
We cannot rent places to stay for ourselves.
No podemos comprar carros que sabemos que aquí es una gran necesidad.
We cannot buy cars, which we know here in Michigan is a great need.
No podemos darnos el lujo de tomar unas vacaciones o incluso asistir a reuniones como esta sin antes buscar quién maneje por nosotros.
We cannot go on vacations. We don't have the luxury of going on vacations or even including attending meetings like this one without first seeking somebody who will be able to drive.
Nosotros, al igual que muchos ciudadanos, pagamos nuestras taxas. Somos personas trabajadoras que queremos manejar sin miedo. Estamos pidiendo algo que ya había años atrás.
We are people just like you who are paying our taxes, and we are hard workers that we want to be able to drive without fear, and so we are just asking for something that used to be a few years back.
Porque para hacer nuestras taxas no nos consideran residentes de Michigan y para regresar las licencias no.
Why, considering taxes and our ability to pay taxes, why do you consider us residents? But when it comes to driver's licenses, you don't.
Las licencias de manejo nos darán un estatus de tranquilidad y responsabilidad.
Driver's licenses would give us a state of peace and also responsibility.
Y tener una licencia no nos hace personas con derecho a votar.
Just to have a driver's license does not mean that we would have the right to vote.
Por eso los invito a hablar con sus legisladores, seguir ampliando nuestras historias.
For this reason, I invite you to keep talking to your legislators and keep sharing our stories
hasta que logremos ganar nuestras licencias de manejo.
until we are able to obtain the driver's licenses.
Aunque muchos legisladores digan que nos apoyan, hay que seguir insistiendo para que hagan esta propuesta una prioridad.
Although many legislators say that they support this, we have to keep insisting so that this becomes a real reality and priority.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thanks to Blanca for sharing her story. And I don't know about you, but I pray for the day that we don't have to hear stories like this. You know, we're hearing them year after year in this organization. And every time I hear it, I feel embarrassed and I feel sad and I feel frustrated. And that's why we do the advocacy work that we're doing. So at this time, we are honored to have two Michigan legislators with us who have been working tirelessly on the Drive Safe bills since their introduction last May. Senator Stephanie Chang and Representative Tyrone Carter. Both have been at our Stranger No Longer advocacy functions for over the months, and we thank them heartily for that. Each will give us a short talk on the Drive Safe bills going forward in 2024, and hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes for questions as well. Maybe we'll start with Senator Chang, who just got here.
Well, good afternoon. It is really great to be here and great to see so many amazing faces here First, thank you to Strangers No Longer, and thank you for all of the advocacy over many years of so many of you in this room. I am feeling always optimistic. So my name is Stephanie Chang. I'm the state senator for Senate District 3 and have sponsored legislation to restore driver's licenses every term since my first term in office. So that's been several times now. And, you know, this is our opportunity this session to get this done. You know, I come to this issue as a daughter of immigrants and someone who just really believes in the humanity and the dignity that these driver's licenses will help to restore for many families across the state of Michigan, but also have been really talking with a lot of different stakeholders and a lot of our lawmaker colleagues about how this is not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do for our public safety, for our economy, and trying to just continue to make sure that people have the facts. And so we are working very hard. Over the fall, we held a weekly check-in meeting with our partners to just continue to advocate and continue to check in on where things were over the fall. Several times a week, we worked with the various coalition members to get letters delivered to every legislative office from farmers, from Korean adoptees, from Indian American organizations, from law enforcement officials, from business organizations, from community organizations. And so I don't even know how many letters were delivered, but it was a lot. We know that lawmakers are very much aware of these bills, but some of them still have concerns, some of them still have questions, some of them still hear misinformation about the bills, and so we are trying to really make sure that we get out the accurate information about the bills, particularly on two fronts. And hopefully you all can help us with delivering this message to your own lawmakers as well as others that you might have a chance to interact with. And two things. One, it was mentioned earlier, but these bills have nothing to do with voting. And in fact, our election system is secure. Our Secretary of State very much supports these bills, and their team very much already has in place the safeguards that are necessary to ensure that we are not accidentally registering non-citizens to vote. And in fact, this year we actually passed a secure automatic voter registration set of bills that actually makes it even more secure. So the argument around non-citizens voting is just false. It's a false narrative. But it's important to not just, when someone raises that, to not just let it go, but to counteract what they're saying with actual facts and information to make sure that they know that that this bill actually will have a line in it that says that this does not change someone's ability to vote. It simply gives them their driver's license or ID. And we know that the Secretary of State, again, has lots of processes in place already to ensure that we are not registering non-citizens to vote. And then the second thing that I think is really, really important to highlight is this narrative around safety. So we actually know that passing the Drive Safe bills will actually enhance and improve public safety from the states across the country that have passed driver's license bills. The number of accidents has gone down. The number of fatalities has gone down. You know, there actually will be, I believe, really significant improvements in public safety on the road. And it makes sense because when you get folks driver's licenses and they go through driver's training and they get car insurance, all of that leads to greater public safety on the roads. And so we actually do have the support of a number of sheriffs and police chiefs across the state. And we're really grateful for their support. Unfortunately, there are also law enforcement stakeholders who are not supportive of these bills. And so it's going to be really important that when you talk to your lawmakers or talk to your neighbors about this issue, is to let them know that this is actually good for public safety. And so that, I think, is just a really important message. So those are two concerns that we're trying to really get folks the correct information on, because we know that those are two roadblocks for a couple of colleagues, and we know that addressing those two concerns will be very important in getting the Republicans who are open on this issue from undecided to a yes. So having your help to talk with them will be really, really important. Obviously, the legislature adjourned in November, so we are not in session right now, but we will be back in session in January. Next year is going to be a very challenging political environment for us to do many things, but I definitely feel very strongly that this is something that we can get done, most likely late in the year. But we can't just wait until the end of the year. We've got to continue to make sure that lawmakers hear about this issue every month. And so, again, contacting your lawmakers, providing them information, helping answer questions, providing responses to concerns is very, very important. We do know that there are, thanks to your help and the help of a lot of different organizations, there are a number of Republican lawmakers who are open on this issue, but have not yet committed to be a yes vote. And so having their support will be really, really important. So just thank you again for all of your advocacy. Thank you to everyone who has been able to share their own personal story, both in settings like this as well as with your own lawmakers. It's really, really impactful, and I'm a big believer that sharing personal stories is one of the most effective ways, and one of the most important ways that we can accomplish big changes that are needed. So again, thank you for your advocacy, and look forward to questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm State Representative Tyrone Carter. I represent District 1, which covers Southwest Detroit. I'm a Southwest Detroiter for life. Still live in the neighborhood, born and raised, went to Southwestern High School. So I get it. I get it, I understand it. A driver's license is more than just the ability to drive, it's freedom. And so what we've talked about since 2008 is the removal of that ability to do those things. The legislature did that in 2008. So we're talking 15 years. So I know that this bill has come up every session since then. But I think we have the best opportunity to do it, but it's timing and positioning. I do have some Republican colleagues that are open to it, but I understand that they've taken a position that it's a no right now because it's political. We have to be totally honest about what everything is about right now. Immigration is a political issue. Driver's license will be a political issue. Voting will be a political issue. But there's ways to get past that. So in my coffee hours, I tell everybody, we have not said no. We're leaning slowly into yes. However, when I come and talk to you all, this is really a friendly group that is like, okay, we'll work with you. There are some groups out there that have done some damage to this cause. We have to be honest about that. You don't go to a legislator's house who's a quiet yes and protest in front of his family and his community. You don't go and sit in the leader's office and demand something that others have been working hard on to get it to the end zone. So we don't hold that against anybody in this room, but if you know people that are doing that, tell them, please, you're not doing us any justice by doing those things. The other thing is, if you live in a Republican district, have conversations with those legislators, because it was the Republican legislature that took it away, and they've taken a position. And I do have a couple Republican colleagues that have told me if we do it at a certain time, there'll be a yes, because it's the right thing to do. I've got some Democratic colleagues that say, hey, I'm in a purple area, can't do it right now. So it's a timing issue. And as long as we're not a no, we have an opportunity to make this happen. And I think we can do it this year. I was talking to the legislators in Minnesota. I went to a conference. They have a wider margin. I need every Democratic vote right now. We're 56-54. Right now we're tied because 2 people ran for mayor and 1, so we're 54-54. But I still see an opportunity and possibility for us to get to where, people just have dignity. And as a retired officer, I'll say this. This will reduce hit and runs dramatically in my community. I think it's the right thing to do because at least you know that everybody who is on the road has at least taken a driver's test. I know some people that aren't immigrants that don't have driver's licenses and still drive. So the goal is to get everybody on the same page so that we know that everybody on the road is qualified to do this and has an understanding and expectation of rules and laws. So we haven't said no. We're still working, but with your support, kind of lean into those legislators that you know could be a yes, that benefit from the workers who do it. I've had legislators tell me they've had to pay for transportation for some of their workers because they don't have driver's licenses. So it is an economic driver as well. So anytime, you know, feel free to call my office. We'll have I don't do a lot of talking. We just need some action. We've talked about this thing for 15 years now. I wasn't even in the legislature 15 years ago. I was at the police department. But I see a time and opportunity for us to finally do something that is going to benefit us, not just as a community, but as a state. And will give us the appearance of being more welcoming as well. You know, you're not going to move someplace where you're, you know, prohibited from doing certain things. So if we're trying to grow population, I think this would be a huge factor in doing that. So we'll be around for questions, and that's it.
Thanks to both of you. That was very, very good. I guess if we have a couple of questions now, anyone have any questions while they're sitting here? And then we maybe get a quick answer so they don't have to stick around too long?
Rich, just
Yeah.
a quick question. Now these soft Republicans, so there's some people that met with Roth, Representative Roth up in Kalkaska, Traverse. Where are you? That met with the Traverse City delegation? You met with, Roth was one of those Republicans, so there is some conversation. Maybe you cannot do this, but can you share us, give us some, not today, but someday give us a list of who are the people that you think we ought to go? Keep it confidential.
We also met with the Moose recently as well, right, Bill? So we've had interaction with the Moose as well, Amy and team. So, yeah, so definitely. And we are planning to come back to Lansing on March 19th, Tuesday, March 19th. Hopefully 200 people are going to come and talk to y'all. So what we can do to help there.
Let me add this real quick. So ordinarily, these bills would go through transportation because it is a transportation issue. Understanding the dynamics of the transportation committee, I took the bills and put them in my committee because they would never move in transportation. For whatever reason, they just won't. But what we're looking for is better outcomes. And again, I've got some colleagues, Republican colleagues, that are on reg reform with me, that we've been able to do some things to benefit their districts and their community. So it's one of those things, well, hey, I leaned into yes on what you needed. I need you to lean a little yes into what I need. So those are ongoing. Everybody's not a no. If they're a no, I just stop talking to them. I mean, it makes no sense. No's no. So I have some colleagues that you know are open to the conversation. So just know that, but I need 56. And again, it's simple math. 56, 21. I need 56 out of the House to move it off the floor. I need 20 in the Senate to move it off the floor. I need the governor to sign it.
Absolutely echo everything that Representative Carter said. And I also think that there, you know, we have names, you know, I think that you actually have the names, but I think that any Republican lawmaker who maybe has a farming background, because there's a number of them in both the House and the Senate, I think would be important to make sure to talk with and remind them again, although they should know this by now, that the Farm Bureau is supportive of these bills. We had a strategy call yesterday, the Farm Bureau was on it. They were going to do some additional outreach, but I think, you know, hearing from folks in their district is really, really important. So again, recognizing that they should acknowledge the impact that these bills will have for our agricultural economy. And we actually had over the fall numerous deliveries of apples from apple growers in Michigan who support these bills. So we're trying to really hit that message home. But again, I think have the conversations. Also, if you can, really try to listen for what questions and concerns people have, and if there are questions and concerns that you don't know the answers to, please let someone know so that we can help get that information, because we want to be able to address those questions, because sometimes people just want to know an answer to a question, they just don't have it, and so we want to be able to help answer those.
Okay, I think we're running short on time, huh, Bill? Maybe we should just thank, yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jim Dwyer at Detroit Christopher Ray High School in Southwest Detroit. So I have a couple quick questions. So Representative Carter, could you remind us which committee you are on that's relevant to the Drive Safe plan?
It's called reg reform, but it's regulation reform. And what it covers, it regulates everything. And we call it the sin tax, if you will. Lottery, alcohol, casinos, cannabis, beauty salons, that's not sinful. But, but anything that has licensing comes through my committee.
Okay.
So I figure driver's license is licensing, so let's work it out.
My bigger question is, I get frustrated sometimes because I'm in a district where I have really supportive representatives, like Representative Carter, you're my representative, State Senator Erica Geis is supportive of this. And so as someone who has representatives that are helpful on this, what can I do and folks like me do to move folks that are on the outside? Like, would it be helpful to get Christopher Ray students to write letters to state senators and state reps in other districts to...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Any advocacy that you can do to really put a human face sometimes and the impact. Like Senator Chang said, you know, personal stories are the big one because everybody has a story. I have a story, you have a story. But nobody knows our story until we tell it or put it on paper. And sometimes it could be that one story that says, wow, this is the right thing to do.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Just a quick question about the Michigan State Police and where they stand on the legislation and what could we do to help move that along?
Yeah, so the state police, okay, so the way, this is kind of a little bit technical, well, I don't know. So, okay, so typically the way things work is when there's a bill before the legislature, and you may know this, but the governor's office designates which agency is going to be the lead agency to take a position on the bills. Well, in this case, it's the Secretary of State, which makes sense because it's going to go through the Secretary of State. I have asked the state police if they, sometimes, in very rare occasions, there will be a secondary agency that can express where they are. And so I have asked the state police if they can consider being a secondary agency to express their opinion to lawmakers, even if the position is neutral, or supportive would be better. But so they're considering that. In my conversations with our legislative liaison for the Michigan State Police, she very much understands this issue, and so she's trying to do what she can internally to try to see what they can do, and at least having conversations with lawmakers who have questions or maybe have been getting some misinformation. So it's a work in progress.
And I just pulled this up. If you Google it, it says Michigan Civil Rights Commission urges legislators, executive office, to allow undocumented to apply for driver's licenses. So there's some support of other agencies. We just got to move this over the finish line. So we're still working.
I guess I want to thank you both for coming. Obviously, we're going to be there on the 17th of March, but anything else we can do to help you, we're here waiting. Anything this is the #1 priority of this organization right now on the advocacy front, and our members need it. So obviously, and we can get personal stories. We have all that at our disposal. Yeah, we can talk. Yeah. All right, let's give them a hand, everybody. Thank you so much. So I want to talk about a second focus of the advocacy group. So obviously Drive Safe, we talked about Drive Safe, it is a continued focus in 2024. We now are going to work on another initiative on our platform, and this is wage theft. And we're going to hear more about what wage theft is, and it's something really impacting our immigrant brothers and sisters. So I would like to introduce Doris Bartolone and Moises Camarina to give their personal experience regarding wage theft.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Daris Bartolón.
My name is Daris Bartolon. Good afternoon.
Vengo a comentarles otro problema que atravesamos como inmigrantes.
I'm going to talk about another problem that immigrants are facing.
También a las personas no inmigrantes, porque creo que también pasan algunos de estos problemas en
Not only
los
immigrants,
trabajos.
but some people that are residents, citizens, they have this problem too.
Lo básico de robo de salario es que no nos pagan por todas las horas que
The
trabajamos.
basic thing about wage theft is we don't get paid for all the hours we work.
Y como inmigrantes no tenemos los recursos para enfrentar esta injusticia.
And as immigrants, we don't have the resources to confront this injustice.
Y siempre tenemos miedo de perder nuestros trabajos y si nos quejamos.
And we're always afraid of losing our jobs if we complain.
Hemos trabajado para una empresa que contrata personal y les paga para que limpien oficinas de una compañía.
I've worked for a staffing company that recruits and pays workers to clean offices at a manufacturer.
Lo que se conoce como staffing company.
That's how a lot of immigrants work, through a staffing company.
Así es como trabajamos muchos inmigrantes.
That's how they work, staffing companies.
A través de una empresa que promueve personal de limpieza.
They go to work to clean offices for the main company, but the staffing company hires them.
Daré algunos ejemplos de cómo funciona el robo de salario.
I'll give a few examples of how this wage theft works.
Un grupo de personas que trabajan en una compañía como esta
A group of persons who were part of a staffing company like this
dejaron de trabajar en ella para ir a trabajar a otra empresa similar.
and one day they left the staffing company to go work for another staffing company so they could get better pay.
Para poder obtener un mejor salario.
Okay. Sigue.
Pero nunca recibieron el pago retroactivo de la compañía de personal original.
But they never got the back pay from the original staffing company.
Robo de salario.
That's wage theft.
La compañía se quedó con sus salarios atrasados.
The staffing company kept their back pay.
Y aquí otro ejemplo, cuando se resolvió la huelga de una fábrica de automóviles.
Here's another example. When the automobile strike was settled,
todos los trabajadores recibieron un aumento. Esta dijo que trabajadores de la compañía que promueve el personal de limpieza también debía tener aumento.
so all the workers got a raise, and the automobile, or the company said that the staffing company workers, they too must be covered by the increase.
Por lo tanto, la compañía automovilística paga a la compañía que promueve el personal de limpieza.
So the automobile manufacturer pays the staffing company for the increase.
Para que sus trabajadores tengan el aumento. Pero la compañía de limpieza no dio el aumento a los trabajadores.
But
Robo de salario.
the staffing company didn't pass this increase on to the workers. That's wage theft.
Otro ejemplo, la compañía de limpieza para la que trabajo reduce dinero de mi cheque de pago para pagar las cuotas sindicales.
Okay, another example, the staffing company deducts money from my paycheck in order to pay union dues.
Sin embargo, la empresa no nos permite el acceso al sindicato para que el sindicato nos pueda ayudar.
But the staffing company doesn't allow us access to the union so the union can help us.
Robo de salario.
That's wage theft.
No recibimos pago para saber exactamente cuántas horas trabajamos y saber si la empresa para la que trabaja está cumpliendo en este pago establecido para las horas extras.
So another thing is we don't get pay stubs so that we know exactly how many hours we worked and whether the staffing company is honoring overtime pay.
Es robo de
That is
salarios.
wage theft.
Recibimos explicaciones confusas de la empresa sobre nuestro salario y la tasa de pago. Nunca sabemos cuánto deberíamos estar ganando.
We get confusing explanations from the staffing company about our pay and pay rate. We never know how much we should be making.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Moisés Camarena, soy líder del Círculo de Hombres en San André Bercet.
My name is Moises Camarena. I'm a leader of the Men's Circle of Support at St. Andre Basset.
Como les había dicho la compañera, tiene que haber una ley que diga que debemos tener comprobantes de pago y de salario.
Like my companion Daris was saying, there needs to be a law that we have to have pay stubs.
También es necesario que haya una oficina de reclamos en Michigan para inmigrantes.
There needs also to be a claims office in Michigan for immigrants.
Por ser inmigrantes nos exigen trabajar más, pero no nos pagan ni las horas extras.
Because we are immigrants, they assign us more work, but they do not pay us for the full hours we work.
Y siempre somos los inmigrantes indocumentados los primeros en ser despedidos.
And it's always the undocumented immigrants who get fired first.
Una mujer de nuestro círculo trabajó una semana y no le pagaron.
One of the women of our circles, she worked for a week, they didn't pay her.
Llamó a su gerente para pedirle el pago y nunca recibió respuesta.
She called the boss for her payment, he never answered, and she couldn't find him.
En cuanto al empleo que hemos visto que se ha producido algunos abusos.
So regarding employment, we've seen that some abuses have occurred.
Por ejemplo, a una persona que trabaja en un restaurante se le pagó con cheque.
For example, a new person working at a restaurant, she was paid by check.
Les pidió que le cambiaran su cheque ahí mismo.
She asked for her check to be cashed right there at the restaurant.
Se lo cambiaron, pero en cambio le reducieron su cheque por haberlo cambiado.
Yeah, they reduced her, they charged her to cash the check.
Esto nos ha sucedido con muchos trabajadores que llevan mucho tiempo trabajando en ese lugar.
That didn't happen with workers who had been working there for a long time.
Nos hemos dado cuenta que independientemente de si somos inmigrantes o ciudadanos estadounidenses, a veces no se nos paga con todas las horas trabajadas.
And I also realize that regardless of whether they're immigrants or American citizens, sometimes people just have not been paid for all their work hours.
Otra mujer de nuestro círculo de apoyo de San Matías comentó.
Another of the women of the St. Matthias Circle of Support, St. Matthias is in Sterling Heights, there's some members here.
Que esa mujer inmigrante había estado trabajando durante mucho tiempo.
She says that a friend of hers, an immigrant woman, has been working for a long time, but they only pay her $12 an hour, 12, under the minimum wage, and they do not give her overtime.
Nosotros los del Círculo de Hombres hemos expresado la importancia de que Strangers No Longer aborde el tema del trabajo.
So the men of our Circle of Support at St. Andre Basset expressed the other night, actually, the importance of Strangers No Longer addressing the point about work.
Dijeron que por qué los indocumentados están en desventaja a la hora de hacer valer sus derechos.
They said they're at a disadvantage.
E incluso ante los sindicatos.
Because they are undocumented when it comes to asserting their rights, including in front of the union.
O a otras personas que son más favorecidas.
Or other people are favored more.
Es necesario que haya un lugar donde podamos quejarnos del abuso del trabajo.
There needs to be a place, a space where they can complain when there is abuse at work.
Yo hablo por muchas personas, pero también hablo por muchas personas que se quedaron calladas por miedo a ser discriminadas o deportadas por quejarse de su trabajo.
So I'm speaking to you on behalf of a lot of people, but a lot of those people are simply afraid and just they just keep quiet, fear of being deported.
Ustedes son nuestra voz.
You are friends.
Necesitamos un cambio.
You are our voice, and we need a change.
Well, I want to thank Darice and Moises for giving those really compelling stories. And, you know, there's so many issues, but this is one we're going to take on. At this point, we have one more speaker before lunch, by the way. But our host for today at this facility, and last year as well, is the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights. The council wants to stop wage theft abuse and has been working to help draft legislation to strengthen the laws around this issue. At this time, I would like to introduce Steve Purchase, who's Director of Communications for their organization, to talk about the carpenters' efforts and how we can help. Steve?
Thank you. Welcome to our house. We are thrilled and honored to host you again this year. This is an issue we care deeply about. It's an issue, as you've heard, that for many people is invisible. A lot of folks don't even know that what wage theft is, let alone what payroll fraud is, let alone that it happens, let alone that it happens as rapidly as it does. So it's something that we deeply care about. And it's an issue that has long roots in our organization, not always positive. In the 1970s in DC, I think is probably the best example. At that time when the DC Metro was being built, the subway system in Washington, DC, a lot of the union carpenters went underground to build that project. Great pay, lots of hours, building meaningful infrastructure. And when they did that, they left all of the construction above ground for the non-union sector. They said, we don't really care about it right now, we're busy down here. And unfortunately, and it's something that we've struggled with and something that we have to take responsibility for, is a big reason behind that was frankly racism. Because the folks left doing the work above ground were Hispanic. And to this day, you go to Washington, D.C., you see cranes in the air, it's not a union contractor doing that work because of that legacy way back when. So it's an issue we care about and something we're working really hard to put right. Payroll fraud has spread across the country to the point where just about any construction site you see, unless it's 100% union, chances are there's payroll fraud going on, and where there's payroll fraud, there's a decent chance that there's other exploitative practices happening as well. What is it? As you've heard, it can take many forms. In our industry, it's really prevalent in the form of 1099 misclassification. Taking folks who are treated like employees, they're directed like employees, they're told where to be, when to show up, what work to do, what tools to use, treating those folks as independent contractors. Doesn't sound that bad, right? Until you realize that it takes a big chunk out of their pocketbook because they're responsible for all the, normally the employer side of taxes. When they get paid, a lot of times they just don't get paid, so that shortchanges communities, it shortchanges everybody who relies on the Social Security system. But it also puts them in a position where they can't be protected by things like workers' compensation insurance, right? Where you get injured and construction can be a dangerous industry, and you only find out then, after you're hurt on a job, that you don't have the protection, and the employer just cuts you loose because you're no use to them at that point, right? And it happens everywhere. In Metro Detroit, major projects supported by tax dollars, we were interviewing workers, a large contingent. In fact, they won't let you on the construction site unless you speak Spanish because they want to protect their scheme from prying eyes. And they've got undocumented workers that the developer is housing in an apartment building that the developer is in the midst of renovating. These workers haven't been paid in going on 2 months now. And they're stuck. They depend on the company for everything. In Lansing, an affordable housing project, again, affordable housing, right? We need way more affordable housing. Has government support. We were interviewing workers on that site. We saw 12-year-old kids framing undocumented kids, right? Just yesterday in the New York Times, there was an article, I encourage you to look it up, about kids working in the roofing sector, one of the most dangerous construction sectors. And talking about these kids as young as 12, again, that are put to work on roofs without safety harnesses. They only go get the safety harnesses when they see the inspector coming down the road, otherwise they don't care. And kids falling off roofs and suffering severe disability or worse because of it. And so, you know, it really is a dire issue. It's also an issue that impacts all of us, right? If you're a business that plays by the rules, you can't compete against the guy down the road who doesn't pay their workers or misclassifies them and so they don't have to pay their taxes, right? And that's incredibly prevalent in residential construction, something we all agree we need way more of, right? It makes it really difficult. It's almost impossible for contractors who treat their workers well, the right way, to compete in that industry. And that takes workers out of the industry, and that slows down projects. It has ripple effects all downstream. So it's a huge problem, and it's tough to tackle. We're doing a lot of things, some of the things I've talked about in terms of interviewing workers and advancing legislation. Some things I can't really talk about to support our law enforcement in enforcing actions against really egregious players, and hopefully we'll have some positive announcements in the new year on that. But one of the big things is we're pushing a package of bills to put some teeth in the hands of law enforcement to go after the bad actors and protect workers. And I want to be clear about that because we are not in this business, and we're not doing this work to put workers in a bad spot or get in trouble. We want to protect workers, and so we work with immigrants' rights groups and we make referrals. We want to protect all workers, whether they're union or not, and that's good for everybody. But this package of bills, it does a few things. It requires wage disclosure, so that, like what we're hearing about over here, if there's different folks being paid different rates, that's transparent and something can be done about it, right? It increases the civil penalties for wage theft. Think about this. If you steal wages from a worker, you're liable for somewhere between 10 and 100% of the amount you stole. So we want to increase that to 3 times the wages, put that money back in the pockets of workers, and we want to levy a $10,000 fine to go to the state if you steal workers' wages. We want criminal penalties that follow the criminal penalties for embezzlement. If a worker steals money from a business, they throw the book at you. If a business steals money out of the pocket of a worker, it's a slap on the wrist. It's part of the business model, frankly, in the construction industry, right? So we want to change that. We want to create additional penalties for repeated violations, making it a 2-year, $10,000 felony if you're caught doing this over and over and over again and putting people in jeopardy. We want to expand what's called the False Claims Act. It's a cause of action for damages for the worst of the worst. We want to create new whistleblower protections so that when we've got brave folks willing to stand up and say what's right and move the ball down the field, that they've got some protection. We want, and this is probably the most controversial piece of this package, we want to create a new violation for worker misclassification. And this is something we feel is really important in our industry, because what happens is an unscrupulous contractor will go to somebody and say, hey, do this work, you're going to be an independent contractor. And then here's 2 other undocumented folks, they're going to work for you. I'm going to pay you, you're going to pay them cash, right? And then so about every 2-3 people on a job is an independent contractor, but not really. It's just a scheme to allow for the exploitation of workers, the mistreatment of undocumented workers, the payment of cash to avoid all the obligations that we have in a civilized society, and worse. The reason that part, by the way, is controversial is because it can touch on some of the things like Uber drivers and food delivery people, right? How do you draw that line right? But we think it's important to protect people at work, and that if you're directed like an employee, you are an employee and you should be treated like an employee. We want to allow for the anonymous processing of complaints for violations of minimum wage and overtime laws. That doesn't happen right now. They can't move forward on complaints without a complainant, and think about the spot that some of these folks are in. It makes it way easier to get traction against the folks who are breaking the law if we can allow some anonymous complaints to move forward. And then we fund the AG's staff to pursue cases and put more information in the Treasury's booklets to guide businesses on how to stay on the right side of the law, because everybody should know what they have to do to do right. And then finally, and it's a piece that I don't think anybody up here knows about yet, but we're working on another piece that we want to include that has passed recently in New York and California and Minnesota, among other places, that would make general contractors liable when their subcontractors steal their workers' wages. Because what happens is you got a general contractor that's legitimate, they'll subcontract it, that subcontractor will be mostly legitimate, they'll subcontract it, right? It's subcontractors all the way down. And then when somebody at the end of that chain gets money taken out of their pocket, there's no one that you can go after to get redress for that individual. So we want to make sure that the folks running these jobs, who should know better, who have the resources, who have the staff to make sure that construction sites go well, that they're responsible for every person on their construction site. So those are the things we're working on wage theft, and we're going to keep pushing until it happens. It's one of our top priorities. I can also say we are very proud supporters of the driver's license bill as well. So our legislative team and our lobbyists are having those conversations in Lansing, and we will continue to push to get that done next year as well. So happy to answer any questions.
Rich asked me we're going to study this for a while, right? So this is fantastic. At least I'm excited, but we need to know more and more and more. So Steve, and the other thing is that, could you just come up and, one of the things that we found out is that the carpenters are working very closely with the best immigration lawyers in the state. It's the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. And so Anna's just going to say a word just to make sure that we know who's part of the team.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna Hilke-Lindes. I'm an attorney with the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, where I've been for the past 10 years, and I work specifically with our worker rights practice group. So we represent farm workers and other low-wage immigrant workers throughout the state, specifically on issues related to their employment rights and where their employment rights intersect with immigration status issues. I really appreciate the testimonies that were shared earlier. Those are so important. We hear those stories from our clients all of the time. The issue of wage theft is such an important issue to address for immigrant workers. We've been very happy to work with Steve and the Carpenters Union on this bill package and ways that we can utilize these tools to really protect all workers regardless of their immigration status. The issue of misclassification, the issues we see with staffing agencies, we see those same kind of issues for farm workers throughout the state, and we really need to see how we can hold employers accountable and make sure that workers have a recourse for violations of their employment rights. We look forward to continue dialoguing about these issues. Very happy to continue sharing updates with Bill going forward, and Rich, thank you all for your attention to these really important issues to support workers. And I will say one piece of quick good news. We passed language access bills, if folks have heard about that this year. It's been, I think, at least 10 years that we've been fighting to pass these bills. These are really important for workers to access the state agencies that process these complaints, and to be able to talk to investigators and make complaints in their own language. So we're celebrating that and what we'll do going forward.
Real quick, if you don't mind. And I know I'm in a really dangerous spot standing between you and lunch, but a lot of the things that we're talking about have a longer time horizon to make a real difference for the folks who are going through this on a day-to-day basis, right? We've got to get legislation passed, we've got to do this, we've got to make these policies. But one way that it matters who's in charge. President Biden's Homeland Security Director issued a memo a little while ago that's little known, but it creates a deferred action status for undocumented workers who are on a work site where there is worker abuse, payroll fraud, misclassification, these kinds of issues, so long as it's being investigated by a law enforcement entity, whether it's a wage and hour division at the state or national DOL or an attorney general or a county prosecutor, it doesn't really matter. And we've been working a little bit with the Immigrant Rights Center to figure out how those avenues work. It's not always the easiest, clearest path to see, but we got some really great clarification from National Immigrants' Rights folks at our conference in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. Basically, if you know of a work site and there are violations and an investigation is created like wage and hour, if someone files a complaint with wage and hour division, the state of Michigan, anybody can then file a letter with the US government, and once that letter is on file, any worker on that job site who's undocumented, whether they're a direct victim or not, can apply for and receive a deferred action status. It's kind of like DACA, but it provides deferred action against deportation for 2 years and a work permit, so that then you can work legitimately for a legitimate employer and do that. It's not without risk. It's not without drawback. Anybody considering it should consult with an attorney and understand their situations, but it is a powerful tool out there. We heard some stories about how it's being put to work around the country. The first 2-year renewals are coming up at the beginning of the next year, so very soon we'll see how the federal government is treating these folks at the end of that initial 2-year period. But it's another tool that's out there thanks to some important leadership in Washington, D.C.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for the good information. Okay, so real quick before lunch, so what's next? As we said, we are planning another Advocacy Day in Lansing on Tuesday, March 19th. We'll follow the same process as last year. We hope to have 200 people this year driving or taking the bus to Lansing to talk to their own legislators with meeting appointments already set up. Our thought right now for this event is that it'll be kind of a two-pronged effort in those meetings with our legislators. The first is the Drive Safe bills. We'll continue that push. And I think this year it's going to be more on the social justice side of the house. I believe they're educated. Now it's got to be guilt tripping. It's my own personal opinion. But secondly, we'll also want to talk about wage theft and whether or not we talk about the actual package that's out there, at least educate them on what our folks are facing and hopefully get some personal testimony like we did last year with Drive Safe from our immigrant leaders in Lansing on the 19th of March. So stay tuned for that. We need your help. We want a big group there. We'll have a kickoff meeting for this event probably in later January. Stay tuned for your emails. We'll send it. We'll have a kickoff meeting, and we will make sure we're educated on both Drive Safe again, and then also on wage theft, so you can have intelligent conversations with your legislators. Okay, with that, I'm going to have Kathleen give you the lunch instructions. Yeah, sorry for the delay, though.
Okay, we've been real busy this morning, but now it's time for your lunch break. You'll have about a half hour. We've set up lunch at the back. You'll find 4 kinds of sandwiches: Italian, turkey, ham and cheese, and veggie. There's water back there, and there's still some coffee in the urns, I believe. You'll also find some baskets. We would really appreciate any free will donations to cover the cost of the lunches. You can put your donations right in those baskets. So at this time, please help yourself, and we'll let you know when we reconvene. Thank you.